So Brazil is notifying in this process that, whoever warns you is a friend, right? If you move forward with this, we're going to go this route. There is a procedure, let's put it that way, a formal procedure behind all this, right? It's a procedure, to use an expression that's very much ours, healthy. There's nothing wrong with it. It's healthy. You let the other person know, look, I have this resource, take it easy. That's what he's saying. And this message, in my opinion, Cesar, you were spot on to mention it. This message is for whoever it may concern. Do you know who that is? It's the American businessmen who do business with Brazil and are losing money. If we don't remember, let's remember. We have 11 products, 11, for which Brazil is the largest supplier to the United States. It starts with pig iron, which for those of us who deal with news and not with companies doesn't mean much, but for those who deal with the daily life of factories, of manufacturing things, pig iron is essential. So we are suppliers of that. Pulp, folks. Pulp is a crucial industry. We think that pulp is for making paper, but nobody deals with paper anymore. Forget paper, it's all on the computer. Sorry, my friend, combine pulp with another little word. E-commerce.
You only think about water packaging. Amazon, Professor.
Pulp, exactly.
Jeff Bezos is losing his hair over this whole business, even though he doesn't have any.
Yeah, exactly. If you take away the pulp, you can't package things for delivery. There's no e-commerce, man. Combine A with B. So in this process, I'm talking about two, right? And there are others that we don't know much about. There are several minerals that we know little about. We have, of course, the key products, sugar, coffee, right? Fruit. No, it's not just that. There are connections, right, between Brazil and the United States that have existed for decades. It's not something new. So let's take it easy, right? And Brazil is making it clear that this can happen. In the subtext of this communication, it's implied, right, that we're going to use the law of reciprocity, which allows us to allocate the quotas that go to the United States to other countries. Pay attention to that. It's obvious. And we've already shown, and the Americans understood this perfectly. They sat down with us to talk in October and November. Why? Because in August, September, and even October, Brazil's exports with the United States was declining. It didn't go down, it went up. There are a lot of people interested in buying what the United States also buys. It's not just China, which grew by 21%. New markets have opened up. Egypt, Philippines, Malaysia, to mention a few that came to mind, bigger ones, yes, several African countries. Because the number is pressing. In August of last year, with the crisis, selling 18 less to the United States. Just Google it and see. It resulted in 3.7 more in exports. This has meaning. So, a businessman deals with reality. Here, there, in Manchuria, in China, it deals with reality. Reality points out some things, right? And that's what's being written in this note. But it's more like a friendly warning. It's not in a confrontational tone, right? Any diplomat at the beginning of their career will notice this doesn't have a confrontational tone. This has a warning tone. That's it. Look, first of all, right, we always have to keep in mind that this year, when it comes to military matters, military invasion, the Amazon is very sensitive terrain. You know, Demore? It's a very sensitive issue. I want to point out, I don't remember exactly, my memory fails me, but this was about 6 years ago. Brazil moved all the units it had on the border with Argentina, which were units that had been on the Argentine border for decades. It transferred all these units to the northern border, right? I'm talking about armored vehicles, military matters. He said they were transferred. In other words, the problem isn't new, right? First of all, the Brazilian Army, the Brazilian Air Force, and the Brazilian Navy are fully aware that this has already happened, right? I've insisted a lot, with the people who talk to me, students and everyone else, on a very concrete fact about this analysis. Well, pay close attention to the following. Brazil is not Venezuela. There are different things. Very different, right? Our reality here in the armed forces is completely different from the Venezuelan reality, right? Our armed forces are absolutely concerned with a new defense policy. They are concerned with electronic warfare. They are concerned with the realities of a country the size of Brazil. They are not worried about ghosts. They are concerned with real things. For example, the Brazilian Navy wants to complete its submarine program, okay? But before completing the submarine cycle, they want to make it very clear about the type of defense they provide on our coast. The Brazilian army is concerned about drones. How do we master electronic warfare? And I haven't even mentioned the Air Force. The Air Force might be the most sensitive part, but then we have to see how much they've evolved with the Yacarro. And that's a reality, right? That armed force we had in mind a few years ago, that's changed. There's no point in pretending otherwise. There's no point in seeing it any other way. They have a different mentality now, right? And it's a professional operational mentality. The strongest debate that exists today in the Brazilian armed forces is a very sensitive discussion about whether we should follow Israel, the United States, and other forces and have a single command instead of three separate commands, including the Air Force. It's something more advanced, okay? That's real, okay? The American armed forces know this, period, okay? I insist. Unfortunately, I have to acknowledge that. There are articles that are very explicit about this, so I shared it. About Colombia, that Colombia is going to do Plan Colombia, that it's going to come here and all that, right? It's better for us to remember, right, the other Plan Colombia that happened during the first Trump administration, right? That they sent, that they even wanted to create a coalition force in Colombia. Pay attention to this. This is important information. It's worth noting. The representative of the Brazilian army who went to that meeting in Colombia was none other than Hamilton Mourão, Bolsonaro's vice president. Do you know what he did when he went there? He looked at the Americans and their request. I'll never forget it. It was that Secretary of State. And he said something obvious to them, right? Brazil will not take part in this because the military equipment we have is far inferior to the Russian equipment in Venezuela. We are not going to get involved in this. Are you going to bring equipment that uses tungsten tips, uranium, tungsten and uranium, anti-tank mortars? Are you going to bring the tanks for us? Are you going to give us those tanks? If you are not going to give us those tanks, we want nothing to do with it. Yeah, no. Yeah. He's just a general, a competent general, 4 stars and all that. But he looks at this and says, look, not even within an ideology are we going to do this. So I suspect, right, I'm pretty sure that we are talking about, the same old game as always. What these people are saying can't even be written down. This reality is very harsh. That's the reality you'd be walking into there. You'd need to go in with hospitals, schools, and the presence of the state to put an end to this. Just imagine, it's the last thing people think about. So it's in this context, right, that I suspect Peter Wexett and Marco Rubio, right, they talk more with their eyes on Trump's succession and his political turf than with any concrete reality. The concrete reality is very far from these facts. It's exactly the same. There's no difference. My friends, what we are talking about regarding the economy, about tariffs, you make decisions, and when serious American businessmen get close, they're like, what are you doing? Didn't you know that we don't have anywhere to buy pig iron? Didn't you know? So it's the same thing here. You need to get informed. saying, I'm going to take Colombia or I'm going to pull the embassy out of Havana, okay? What are you actually going to do concretely besides agreeing to bring some, not even all, just some of these guerrillas into politics? Forget the weapons. That's what happened with Gustavo Petro himself. Stop the armed struggle and come into politics. Join the political process. If anyone has any doubts about this, they can choose the example, they can take the example of the Israeli military who fought their fight and came back. Or we celebrate 250 years of independence. Look at the American militias who fought for independence, how they returned to the political struggle. You can choose, pick whichever example you want. So it's the same. The example for Colombia, you need to bring these guerrilla groups into politics to form a party anyway. The word is harsh, but that's the word, civilized, right? So in some way, that's the process. It's very far from the view of Pete Hegseth and Marco Rubio. They're only interested in, sorry for such a harsh expression, you see, my deal, to keep the lucrative deals at the White House for themselves, which now belong to Trump, and then